Hello, friend Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And in today's episode, we are joined by Mitch Bannon, Blue Jay writer for Sports Illustrated. Mitch and I talk some 2023 Toronto Blue Jays, but in particular, deep dive and get you set for the Saturday and Sunday matchups of Cardinals Blue Jays.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Here with Mitch Bannon from Sports Illustrated, talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball. Mitch, fantastic to have you on the show. How's everything going in the Mitch Bannon world? Let's start with that first and foremost.
Good. I'm not sure if I'm quite mentally or physically prepared for the 162 game grind, but I think I'll catch up real quick and get into it.
Awesome. I know you're as excited as we all are. Mitch, if I were to say to you, let's get into something heavy duty right away, the old World Series convo. Now, if I were to say to you, Mitch, that I've actually come back from the future, I can tell you, Mitch, that the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays actually win the World Series. What's your instinct? What's the first thing that you're thinking? Oh, well, if that's the case, then X must have gone really well. What's the X factor here, Mitch, that you think needs to happen for the Toronto Blue Jays to achieve that goal of the World Series this season?
I would say if they're going to win the World Series, obviously like so much has to go right for that to happen, but I would think the top of rotation boys are like the top of rotation guys. I would say we kind of know what the lineup is. You can get by with some shaky back of rotation pitching come playoff time, but to win the World Series, they need like Gausman, Manoah, Bassett to kind of be dealing at that point, and probably one other guy. So if you're telling me they won the World Series, I'm assuming those guys were hauling heavy innings and dominating in October.
Awesome. Now, Mitch, for your money right now, the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays, who's a Blue Jay that you're excited about, you think is a very legitimate contributor to this team, just not really getting a lot of attention right now?
It might be a cop-out to say Bo, but I'll give you another name. I do think Bo's going to have an incredible season, but I think some of these guys at the back of the bullpen are getting a little slept on. Maybe specifically Jimmy Garcia. He's been throwing really hard in spring. He was underratedly really solid and really consistent last year. He only had like maybe 3 or 4 stinker performances the whole season. I think he's a true legit setup man. And I think add Swanson, add Meza, add Bass to that mix. The Jays have like 4 or 5 of those guys now.
And who's a Blue Jay that you're maybe a little concerned about, Mitch? If we're having an open, honest conversation, I'm maybe a little concerned about this particular Jay.
Yeah, I think obviously there's some concerns at the back of the rotation, but I'm really looking forward to these first few Chris Bassett starts because honestly, I haven't watched a whole lot of Chris Bassett baseball. I don't know what he looks like when he's at his best, but in spring training, it kind of seemed like he wasn't quite there yet. He talked a lot about how he was still kind of ramping up. Yeah. He knows the schedule he needs to be on. With a veteran like that, you give him the benefit of the doubt, but he wasn't really missing bats. The velo was still a mile or 2 below his career norm. So I'm hoping he can ramp it up in these first few starts and ease my concerns. But until he does that, I'm going to be a little skeptical.
Now, with the Final Four upon us, Major League Baseball season, go time, let's talk a little FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and that's because right now FanDuel giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. So that's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. You can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads, Major League Baseball, who cuts down the nets. I mean, you name it, all on an app that is safe, secure, super easy to use. So don't miss out on your shot at the no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up and make every moment more with FanDuel. Here with Mitch Bannon, a Blue Jay writer for Sports Illustrated. And Mitch, you've seen all kinds of different, variations of the Toronto Blue Jays as a roster, as a culture. What dare I even put it that way, as a culture. Now in walks Don Mattingly. And Mitch, I go back in my Blue Jay fandom as well. And if there's a comp pointed out to me, somebody in the comments pointed out to me, I can't think of a time that the Toronto Blue Jays have ever had somebody like this on their coaching staff, somebody who walks in the door and addresses something major right away. I think the accountability is something that had to be addressed on this team, Mitch. The reason for the bald head right here is how many times in the last couple seasons have we seen them very sloppy defensively, throwing to the wrong base, missing cutoff men. The base running has been completely unacceptable, and the situational hitting, Mitch, has been non-existent, and I've not seen any accountability for any of these things. Now, Don Mattingly walks in the door. And Mitch, I've said if you picture when you're coming back to the dugout, there's the fence, and then there's the right entrance or the left entrance. The right entrance is where Vladdy and all the boys are. The left entrance is where all the coaches are. In 2023, if you're making the same sort of mistakes you were making previously as a Toronto Blue Jay between the ears, you better enter the door on the right, because on the left, there is accountability. On the left, Donnie Baseball is ready to get in your ear. He's not going to be having it. I'm looking forward to the level of accountability that he's going to bring to the table. Where are you on Don Mattingly?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to talk to him when I was down at spring training, and I kind of hope I get a chance to kind of pick his brain a little bit as the season goes on. But I do think he kind of brings and will echo the exact message that John Schneider is trying to foster. Like, a lot of this coaching staff, including Schneider himself, is very much the same one that the Jays started the season with last year. So bringing in Mattingly, which is a different voice, which is someone who can change the coaching culture a little bit. And I think Schneider wanted to change things up. He wanted this attention to detail, as you kind of alluded to there. And so bringing in a voice who can echo that and who they're on the same page with, I think is super important. So I think it's more, you didn't have an opportunity to really change a whole lot because you have a lot of the same people. And so bringing in Mattingly, a guy that it's basically impossible not to respect because of what he's accomplished as a manager, as a player, is really important to kind of get that echo from what Schneider wants to be saying.
Awesome. Mitch, were you around back in the day, Mitch, when Mattingly was a player? You look young.
Not quite. I wish I was.
Okay.
I didn't get to fully appreciate his playing days.
Yeah, he was just absolutely incredible. And that's saying something, Mitch. I think it says something when Blue Jay fans, like myself of that age, can really rave about a Don Mattingly, because this is in the day where the baseball game you watched was the baseball game the TV channel told you were watching, right? So to know how good other players were in other markets, it really speaks to how good and how special they really were. And Don Mattingly was just absolutely incredible. I'm really excited. His approach at the plate, I mean, this guy was an RBI machine, so I'm really excited to see the situational hitting improve. And here we got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. coming off a Gold Glove, and dare I say, I think Mattingly is going to help him even further at first base with the defense as well. So I'm really excited about that. Now, very much want to dive into the weekend matchups, but I'd be remiss, Mitch, because one of your recent articles was 3 bold predictions for the Blue Jays this season. Now, I'm on the other side of all 3, so I want to get into these with you. But they're, in fairness to you, they're bold predictions for a reason, right? They're bold. You're going to have some people who don't agree. All 3, I mean, fingers crossed on all 3. And don't get me wrong, first and foremost, we're Blue Jay fans, right? So fingers crossed on all 3. The first one, I think, is the one that does have a chance, but it does seem like a big number to me. But you've got Dalton Varsho smacking 35 home runs. Is coming off 27 last season. His road ballpark's now going to be, Fenway, that short right field porch in Yankee Stadium. I kind of see the strategy there. We know Toronto. We know our own fences have been brought in. Is that where you were going with that, or what are you seeing? What are you excited about with Dalton Varsho, in particular with his power?
Yeah, I think it's just like he's got a lot working for him that you kind of mentioned there this year. And like he had a really good season, 27 homers last year. And those weren't like fluky 27 homers. So you're not like naturally going to assume there's some regression. And
Good
then
point.
he was a 20, like he was playing, I think Chase Field's like 20th in league-wide home run factors.
Wow.
And then even last year, Rogers Center was like 8th or 9th. And so you take that big jump, you already can assume that there'll be a few more home runs. And then you move those fences in even further. Like, I just think he's got so much working for him. He's going to be a nearly everyday player just because his glove is so good. They're going to hit him against righties and a few lefties too. I think he's going to get the opportunity and have all those park factors in the at least in at Rogers Center just working in his favor this year.
Mitch, agree or disagree on this? I think that that he's huge for this team. And you know what? I'll correct myself. I think that Dalton Varsho is huge for the regime, for Shapiro and Atkins. I'm a huge believer in Shapiro and Atkins. I believe the Blue Jays have never been in better hands. There's never been something built sustainably like what Shapiro and Atkins have built here. But they're certainly not without criticism. The pitching, for example, the pitchers that they've developed, the quantity hasn't been there. There's been some quality. Here comes Alek Manoah. Here comes Ricky Tiedemann, but it's very top heavy. I think same can be said, and to a lesser extent, even for the outfield, Mitch. That's one thing they haven't really drafted and developed, had that outfielder be able to come up to the big league level on that controllable contract. Now Dalton Varsho is that guy. So, I mean, agree or disagree, Mitch, I think for the regime standpoint, Varsho is a really important guy that has to contribute.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. It has been kind of like the depth starting pitching and the outfield prospects are the 2 areas where they've really struggled. And the bullpen obviously have really struggled to kind of internally develop guys. And so they went out and they used one of their biggest chips in Moreno to go out and get Varsho. So you're putting a lot in that guy. And he's also a guy who will be here for, I think, the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of pairing him alongside the two big righty bats in Bo and Guerrero. And like, who knows what's going to happen after 2025? Those guys could walk. They could get to free agency. And so you're kind of invested in these next 3 years. And Varsho is going to be a big part of these next 3 years.
We're with Mitch Bannon, a Blue Jay writer for Sports Illustrated, and the second bold prediction Mitch Bannon made was that Yusei Kikuchi would strike out 175 batters. Now, you already know there's pushback on this, Mitch, because I mean, there's such extreme camps here, right? People who are absolutely buying into what they saw or the numbers in spring training, and people who are more like myself, who are relying on what we've seen his entire career. Mitch, his second last start, I liked his fastball. It's the only time I really liked it. His struggles last season were the fastball. Now, and I didn't see a great fastball in spring. I love that the cutter seems to be persona non grata. That cutter seems to be gone. Thank goodness. So that maybe is some cause for optimism. That new off-speed pitch he has, what Gausman calls it a curve sliderish kind of pitch. Like they can't even really define it because it's got some sort of unique movement. So I guess there is cause for optimism, but you are in on Yusei Kikuchi. So talk me into Yusei Kikuchi, Mitch.
I would say it's important to caveat that I'm in on his strikeouts. I still think that Yusei is the type of guy who's going to have clunkers. He's going to not make it out of the first or second inning in a few starts this year. That's going to happen. We're going to be talking all year about him tinkering, him toying, him changing things. That's just kind of the Yusei Kikuchi experience. But I think at a base level, he is going to come into this year. He has come into this year better than he did last year. And so just assuming he gets those few more innings, the strikeouts have never really been a problem for him.
Yeah.
Like you look at his strikeout rate last year, and I tossed a chart in that article I wrote. He had like the 6th highest strikeout percentage by a Blue Jay in the last 25 years.
Wow.
Like, it's crazy. He was right below the Robbie Ray season. So the strikeouts have never really been the problem for him. It's just getting the innings. And if he can give you 4 or 5 innings in most of his starts, he'll have the strikeout rates to get 175. If he takes a true jump and can give you like 6 innings most starts, he could be a 200 strikeout guy. Wow. So I think like we're still going to see clunkers. There's still going to be struggles, but I think the strikeouts will be a consistent for him this year.
That's such a great point, Mitch. I'm thinking of his 2021 when the first half he was good enough to make the All-Star team, and in the second half there was only one pitcher in all of baseball who was hit harder than him. His ERA was 6, and like that second half was just atrocious. But it was a strikeout per inning pitch still, right? You're exact right. The strikeouts, the band, it's the other 2 outs in the inning that have been an issue for Yusei Kikuchi. Yes, and third and final bold prediction, Mitch: the Toronto Blue Jays will in fact win the American League East. I am. Every single year, and it happened last year, I did see it, but every single year I have to say that I will believe the Toronto Blue Jays will finish ahead of the Tampa Bay Rays when I see it. I mean, this is, you talk about really, that is one of, I joked earlier, that really is one of the main reasons for the bald head, Blue Jays versus Tampa Bay Rays. It's never mattered what the rosters are, what place these two teams are, who's playing well going into the series. Nothing has ever mattered. The Rays always beat the Blue Jays. Now it's gone with the balanced schedule. It's gone from 19 times playing the Rays now down to 13. So I do like that. But wow, Mitch, that is my stance. I'll believe the Blue Jays finish ahead of the Rays when I see it. What are you seeing in this division that's got you saying, you know what, Jays are the top team in this division?
I just think it's the depth. They can hang with any of these teams in the depth. And for 162 games, that's like kind of the most important part. Like the Yankees have top end talent. The Jays have top end talent. The Rays have top end talent. So do the Orioles. So it's really just who has the depth, who stays healthy. We've seen the Yankees already get pretty injured. The Rays were really injured last year. Maybe they have a bounce back, but maybe some of those injuries kind of snagged them a bit again this year. I think on paper, and going on paper and comparing the Rays versus other teams is a mistake that a lot of people make. I agree that you can't really count them out. But on paper, I think the Jays and Yankees are far and away the most talented teams in this division. And the Jays made it through spring training healthy and the Yankees didn't. And I think that could be all the difference.
Just side note there, you mentioned Baltimore. Mitch, I think it's downright rude of the Orioles to try to get back in this. I prefer the world where they're just a bottom feeder. So I'm not happy with what I'm seeing with Baltimore anyway. Let's dive into the weekend series, the 2 games here. I really like the Jays in the Saturday matchup, and I really like St. Louis in the Sunday matchup. So I want to get your thoughts. So that Saturday matchup is Jack Flaherty and Kevin Gausman. Now Flaherty made just 8 starts last season. upside potential wise, he's every bit as good as Kevin Gausman, but Kevin Gausman doesn't come with any of the baggage, the injury concerns, anything like that we've seen from Flaherty. He's pitched extremely well at home in his career. Now, the Blue Jays last season were as good as it gets against righties, absolutely top tier against righties. Blue Jays were a good road team last year as well. So there is some glass half full, a lot of glass half full here, I think, for that matchup. And the Blue Jays, after seeing the kitchen sink thrown at them by Mikolas, I think they'll jump on these Flaherty fastballs on Saturday. I like the Blue Jays on Saturday. We've seen how good Gausman's looked in spring training. What are your thoughts on that Saturday matchup?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fun one. Gausman looked so good in spring training, and he's a guy I had some question marks coming into spring about, just because, like, okay, second year in the division, second year really only throwing 2 pitches. Are guys going to figure you out? Spring training, nobody was figuring him out. He was mixing in the slider even more. The fastball looked even better than it did last year. That's kind of a pitch he got hit on last year. So him missing bats with the fastball is super important. Him being able to spot the splitter for strikes is something he didn't really do last year. And so he was showing even more looks in spring. So I think he can be even better this year. Like, the peripheral numbers last year were really good. If he inches even closer to those, he'll come top 3 in Cy Young this year for sure. So he's fun.
Wow.
Flaherty is interesting. He's got like the sinker that I think could give a couple of these guys trouble. And like, the Cardinals are a really good team. I just tweeted out they're my pick to win the World Series this year.
Wow.
They're obviously a bit down the list in terms of like World Series favorites and odds, but that lineup is so deep. They have Dylan Carlson, who was a guy floated in Jay's trade rumors all offseason, on the bench. Like, he's not even going to start games for them. Jordan Walker, who knows what that kid's going to be like. He could be another 1,000 OPS guy for the Cards, but I think this is a true test for the Jays right out of the gate.
And I'm looking right at Nolan Gorman as well, Mitch. There's another guy in that lineup who didn't exactly embarrass himself as a rookie last season. He played about half the season on the major league level, hit 14 home runs as a rookie. That's not bad at all. And all 14 were against righties. Jays are throwing all righties this weekend. So he's a guy that I think we need to keep an eye on as well. Isn't it funny, Mitch, how Kevin Gausman literally was the example Major League Baseball used of, hey, this pitching style is no longer this is out now. So everybody wondered how he would adjust. He hasn't even given up a run yet in spring. He didn't even give up a run in spring training, but like, just really, really, really remarkable. How do I put this, Mitch? Aren't we so glad? Aren't we so lucky to have landed Kevin Gausman when we did? You look at the free agent contracts now for pitchers, and you look at how good Gausman's been. That was a bit of luck, Mitch, right? That was a bit of good luck for the Blue Jays.
Well, like, especially for this front office, their other 2 big kind of free agent starter signings, or not free agent, just signings of starters, Barrios and Kikuchi, definitely didn't go great in the last 2 years. We'll see what the Bassett deal looks like, but they certainly nailed the Gausman one. And just having that kind of co-ace with Manoah is so important. A guy you can rely on for 200 innings. A guy, I think it's really important to have the guys that, like, when they're on, they're basically untouchable. Those are the guys that you win World Series with. Like, sure, he's going to have a few bad starts. Sure, lots of his starts are going to be 6 innings, 2 or 3 earned runs. But when he's on and that splitter is moving like 25 inches away from lefties, he's giving you 8 innings with 1 run. He's giving you the starts he did in that second wild card series game against the Mariners. Like, he's the type of guy you want in a playoff game.
You know, I'm often asked for ideas on last minute tickets. For me in particular, asked about Blue Jay game last minute tickets, right? And I never had a good answer, but I do now. Gametime.co. That's gametime.co. Buying tickets to your favorite events, I mean, simply shouldn't be stressful. And Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, theater, you name it, in your area. Killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're going to have. Flash deals and last-minute tickets. Easy to buy tickets, and for every kind of event in your area, you get images of the seat views. The lowest price guarantee has got to be my favorite thing here, and that is if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now, again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Beautiful. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, here with Mitch Bannon, Blue Jay writer for Sports Illustrated. That brings us to the Sunday matchup. Very concerned about the Sunday matchup. Chris Bassett, you mentioned, what do we make of Chris Bassett? Because his stuff wasn't there in spring, but we kept hearing that, oh, no, this is par for the course. This is a ramp up. So hopefully it is going to get ramped up. But really, my concern about that game is, and you mentioned how potent the St. Louis lineup can be, but really it's the St. Louis starter. It's Jordan Montgomery. I don't understand at all how the Blue Jays were so bad against lefties last season. The whole lineup was right-handed, but there were teams like Washington, like there were bottom-feeding teams who literally were worst against lefties last season. But of the winning teams, of the contenders, the Blue Jays were just atrocious and by far the worst against lefties. Again, didn't make any sense to me. St. Louis brings in Jordan Montgomery from the Yankees. He ends up going, 6-3 for them down the stretch, pitched very well at home. Jays last season, 12-20 versus lefties, as I said, like just really odd. Now, Bo always hits Montgomery well. You mentioned Bo earlier. He's going to need to be a key cog, I think, on Sunday. Kirk has hit him. I think we'll see Kirk in the lineup on Sunday as well. He's hit Montgomery. But wow, I'm really concerned about this Sunday matchup, Mitch. Where are you on the Sunday game, Jordan Montgomery versus Chris Bassett?
Yeah, I do. One of the reasons I love the Cardinals is because I think Steven Matz and Montgomery are in for huge years. That Cards Park is so good for left-handed starting pitchers, especially kind of like fly ball guys. So I think they could both have really good seasons. Obviously, anything can happen in one game, but another guy I think will play in that Sunday game that I'm interested to see is Whit Merrifield. I bet he gets to start in left field in that. I think he had a really good spring. He was kind of mixing it up, stealing bases, trying to be like the super utility guy he's kind of been his entire career. I think he's going to really try to be that for the Jays this year, just batting 8th or 9th instead of batting first like he did for the Royals all those times. So he's a guy with like an 800 career OPS against lefties. He can do enough by himself to help you win a game against a tough lefty. So they did kind of generally struggle against lefties last year, at least compared to what you would perceive them to do with all those big right-handed bats. But anything can happen in one game. So we'll see if Whit can win the one.
This is music to my ears. I mean, I think I have Whit Merrifield as the X factor for the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays. I think the fan base is about to find out exactly how good he is. I think when he came over at the trade deadline and he just looked at his numbers, extremely underwhelming. These were all career lows. But if you look between the ears, Mitch, I think last season, Whit Merrifield, at the beginning of the season, the handwriting was on the wall. He would have known he was going to be traded at he would have known his time in Kansas City, his days in Kansas City were numbered. He didn't want to leave Kansas City. So between the ears must have been a difficult season for him. What did we see the last couple of weeks when he was inserted as an everyday player? It was absolute fire. And you talk about he's not going to be at the leadoff spot anymore. He's going to be down in the bottom of that lineup. Well, Whit in the 8th spot, Kevin Kiermaier in the 9th spot. We're going to see days as well with Varsho in that 7th spot. That's base running ability at the bottom of this lineup, Mitch, that I'm saying we've never seen in Toronto Blue Jay history.
Yeah. They really haven't had that true leadoff guy since like Jose Reyes that can like kind of give you the OBP and the stolen base. And now they got 3 of those guys at the bottom of the lineup. And obviously Springer's a very non-traditional leadoff guy. He'll hit you the home runs at the top. But I think this team is built very much in the mold of the baseball John Schneider says he wants to play. Awesome. Obviously they got the boppers, but I think they're going to run wild on the bases. I think especially early in the season, everyone's going to have the green light. Maybe you give some guys yellow or red lights after they run into some outs after a couple of weeks. But I think to start the season, I think we could have a couple tone-setting games.
And Mitch, can't let you go without getting your thought, because we've touched on Kevin Kiermaier. I mean, Mitch, am I crazy here? I've never liked Kevin Kiermaier, so I already knew I was going to have to be. Like I said, I've got huge problems with the Tampa Bay Rays. They beat us all the time. I have huge problems with the Rays, and that whole Kiermaier thing with Kirk, with the card, and then the next day, what card? What? Oh, I hated all of that. I never liked Kevin Kiermaier. Now it says Blue Jays across his jersey, right? So I have to warm up to him, and Mitch, he's making it easy to warm up to. I gotta say, I mean, personality-wise, but Mitch Bannon, I mean, is it just me? He had a serviceable bat. Dare I say, he had a good bat in spring training, and he's always hit well at Rogers Center. So, Mitch, I mean, am I crazy to start getting excited about Kevin Kiermaier?
I think you can look at both Belt and Kiermaier in the same way. These are like great clubhouse guys who you would want on your team alone just for the personality. Like in spring training, Kevin Kiermaier was legitimately bouncing off the walls. That guy has more energy than any veteran player I've ever seen in my life. And so you bring those guys in for their personalities alone, but they're both also great, like upside coming off injury plays. Kiermaier's the hip. I think Belt's the knee or the lower body injury, the surgery he had last year. And so you're kind of betting on at least one of those guys getting back to kind of their career norms. And if both of them can get back to what they were, the Jays are looking at having all-star candidates on like 1 year, $8 million deals. And so I think they both have the potential. Both are old. I'd be surprised if both truly pan out, but I did like the risk signings on both of those guys because you get the floor of the personality with the upside of the true on-field player.
Boy, a lot of great stuff today. No surprise, Mitch Bannon, Sports Illustrated. Mitch, where can the Locked On Blue Jay listeners, where can they follow and enjoy your work?
Sure, yeah. I'm at Mitch Bannon on Twitter. You can go to InsideTheBlueJays.com for all my written work, and just put out a podcast of my own, Inside the Blue Jays podcast, this morning for a little opening day edition as well.
Booyah! Hey, I know it's on my on my agenda after we're done here. Then, Mitch, that's awesome. Really appreciate your time, Mitch. Geez, as soon as you mentioned Brandon Belt, I'm like, oh, I want to talk to Mitch about Brandon. There's just so much I could talk to you about Blue Jay baseball, but of course, I'll respect your time. Much appreciated. We'll have you on again for sure to talk some Blue Jay baseball, and much appreciated for your time today, sir.
For sure. Have a good one, Craig.
Thanks, Mitch. And that wraps up our first week together on Locked On Blue Jays. Certainly thank you for spending time as often as you did this week talking Blue Jay baseball with me. Lots more to come, of course, as the season progresses. Certainly hope you have a great weekend, and I hope it's a weekend full of a pair of Blue Jays victories, and we'll see you on Monday.